This video will be a black screen podcast because it's just so much easier for me to edit, and if you're interested, you'll listen. If you're not, you won't, so whatever. I wanted to make a follow-up video addressing some of the comments on my last video, The Downfall of Sam Harris. Oh boy, that video got completely hammered by downvotes, and I have a theory as to why, but the thing about downvotes is that you don't know who is disliking your video and why. I can speculate that most of the downvotes came from random Harris fans and not my own subscribers, but I want to clarify my position on Islam for my subs, in case any of those downvotes came from me not being clear enough on this issue. One of my subs reached out to me and asked for clarification, and I'm glad she did because I hate when people jump to conclusions and assume the worst. I agree with Sam's general points about Islam, but not necessarily his political leanings regarding Islam. The general points I agree with are 1. The Quran, like the Bible and other religious texts, has no basis in empirical reality, and its claims do not survive scrutiny. There is no reason to hold on to religious beliefs because you can find community and morality outside of religion. And number 2, religion is like sports. It's a very broad category. Not all religions, just like not all sports, are equally violent or dangerous. Compare badminton to Thai boxing, as Sam does. The risk for injury is obviously greater playing football than joining the swim team. The content of religious texts varies greatly, and the problem is not simply fundamentalism. The core principle of Jainism, for example, is nonviolence. Fundamentalist Jains walk around with a broom to gently sweep insects out of the way so as not to step on them. You could argue that all religions have their problems, and I'd agree. But Sam's point is that currently, Islamic fundamentalism poses the greatest threat. People on the left often point to the Westboro Baptist Church as this reflexive response to criticism of Islam. But it's not really a fair comparison because the Westboro Baptist Church has like 100 members, and they're not freaking beheading people. Sam acknowledges the many problems with Christianity, but he is more concerned about the spread of Islam, and reasonably so. Christianity had its violent phase and has gone through a reformation, whereas Islam is currently in its violent phase and desperately needs reform. Also, much of the violence in the Bible is in the Old Testament, and you can't honestly deny that Jesus is more of a peaceful figure than Muhammad. Jesus did not have sex slaves. There's nuance. Which brings me to point number 3. A lot of people reflexively characterize all criticism of Islam as Islamophobia. I agree with Sam that Islamophobia is a bit of a misnomer because a phobia is an irrational fear, and Sharia law is a very valid thing to be afraid of. However, there are many moderate Muslims who do not want to impose Sharia law, so it's irrational to be fearful of Muslims. Anti-Muslim bigotry is a much more accurate term to describe bigotry towards Muslims as people. It gets a little fuzzy with Sam, though, because although he condemns anti-Muslim bigotry and has explicitly stated he does not support a Muslim ban, he is allied with people who do display certain levels of bigotry towards Muslims and support right-wing immigration policies, so I don't know. I want to highlight that this is not my area. I'm not an expert in foreign policy or geopolitics, nor do I keep up with Sam's opinions on this matter. But I will say that Kyle's nuanced position, which he lays out in his ceasefire video, makes sense to me. And Ina's nuanced perspective as an ex-Muslim woman from Saudi Arabia makes sense to me. I'll leave links in my description box. It seems that people in the progressive camp, such as Reza Aslan, downplay the inherent violence and explicit instruction in Islamic texts, whereas people in the new atheist camp downplay other factors that lead to the spread of Islamic terrorism, such as US intervention and political grievances. It's the age-old nature versus nurture debate. It's both. Why can't we just acknowledge that most problems are caused by a multitude of factors? Lastly, I think there is a fair pushback against the left when, in the interest of promoting multiculturalism, they slip into the danger zone of moral relativism. However, I think this may be blown out of proportion by right-wing reactionaries and alt-right sympathizers like Sam Harris. I could be wrong, though. I hope that clears everything up. I can't say that I agree with everything Sam has said on the topic of Islam, because I don't pay enough attention and I don't really know enough to have an informed opinion. Now I want to talk about a problem that has become very apparent to me over the years, especially after reading all the comments, and that is that atheists are not as smart and moral as they think they are. These are the people who insist that religion is stupid and you can be moral without God. Well, fucking prove it! Use your brain and live up to the values you profess. Actions speak louder than words. I've been binge listening to the podcast Polite Conversations with Ina, and I gotta say, 10 out of 10 would recommend. But holy shit, she really highlights this problem within the atheist skeptic movement. There's so much hypocrisy, misogyny, and tribalism in a movement that is supposedly against these things. It's rampant with anti-feminist, anti-left, alt-right sympathizers. People who claim to be on the left have been sucked so far into this anti-SJW rabbit hole that they frequently give the benefit of the doubt to right-wing nutjobs, but not to progressives. As Ina has articulated so well, they've made some very strange bedfellows with people like Jordan Peterson, who is an anti-feminist Christian conservative. What place does he have in the secular humanist movement? Sam pushes back on Peterson's views, but why is there so much crossover among their fans? Why was Peterson his most requested podcast guest? It's so bizarre. As a woman who grew up in Saudi Arabia, one of the driving factors that pushed her away from religion was the bigotry and misogyny of conservative Islam. She found community with other atheists, but now she's witnessing this movement devolve into this tribalistic, intellectual dark web who also exemplify bigotry and misogyny. Of course, some are much worse than others, and some aren't bigoted at all. But many prominent leaders in the movement, including Sam Harris, Dave Rubin, Matt Dillahunty, Peter Boghossian, and Michael Shermer, have varying degrees of sympathy for the alt-right, and seem united in owning the libs. She's not arguing that they shouldn't criticize nonsense coming from the left. She's saying that there's no proportionality. They aren't looking at the big picture. They have allied with right-wingers on the topic of Islam because they claim that these are the only people making sense on this issue. But they aren't. There are plenty of rational leftists out there. No need to cozy up with neocons. Take the people Rubin has on his show, for example. Stefan Molyneux, Lauren Southern, Ben Shapiro. These aren't sensible people with interesting ideas. These are right-wing lunatics with very dangerous ideas. And he doesn't push back against them. He's the king of softball interviews. If you want an extremely thorough understanding of what I'm talking about, there's this epic trilogy called Dave Rubin's Battle of Ideas, which I'll link below. While Ina has strong feelings about Christianity, she's not going to go join a panel discussion with conservative Muslims to talk about the problems with Christianity. So why are these secular humanists joining panels with neocons to discuss Islamic terrorism and the problems with the left? The enemy of my enemy is not my friend. I want to hear my favorite authors and political commentators converse with actual intellectuals on important issues. I certainly don't have to agree with someone on everything to consider them an intellectual, but they should meet a certain standard of intelligence and respectability. The bar is a little low considering there are so many better options out there. Side note, does anyone vaguely remember the Atheism Plus movement that popular atheist YouTubers smacked down? Well, I read the Rational Wiki page about it, and it seems like a perfectly rational concept to me. It was proposed in 2012 by blogger Jen McCrite, and it encouraged atheists to move beyond the question of non-belief and apply skepticism to everything, including to social issues like sexism, racism, poverty, and crime. Can we revive this? Ina joked about how, instead of embracing Atheism Plus, prominent atheists denounced it, arguing that it would muddy the waters and alienate people. Yet they slowly began to add their own beliefs about feminism and social justice to their cause. And instead of Atheism Plus social justice, it became Atheism Plus anti-left, anti-SJW, anti-feminism, or Atheism Minus. Talk about muddying the waters and alienating people. Another thing that I've learned is that people like Sam Harris, who have persuasive talent and speak with such confidence, develop very loyal followers. This can be a problem. When someone confirms your biases in a really articulate way, they gain your trust. So when they present information on a topic you know very little about, you take them at their word. I fell victim to this. As I was researching and writing my script, I saw that some people had accused Sam of defending Lawrence Krauss after his allegations of sexual harassment. I listened to his statement about Lawrence, and I found nothing wrong with it. He didn't defend Lawrence. He was supposed to attend an event with Krauss and Matt Dillahunty, and the day before, BuzzFeed released an article detailing multiple allegations of sexual misconduct against Krauss. Sam convinced the other speakers that it was best that they disinvite Krauss. A good call, although kinda sad that they had to be convinced. He describes that at the event they briefly addressed the situation and said that they needed more time to look into these allegations before they comment. He's their friend, makes sense. Sam originally had his doubts given that the source was BuzzFeed, but he then heard from women he knew personally or deemed credible that Krauss indeed had a pattern of this type of behavior. So he said he could offer no defense of Krauss. Good for him. Then he shares his general feelings about the Me Too movement and how we should be careful to distinguish between sexual harassment, assault, and rape, and that we shouldn't put the Aziz Ansari's of the world in the same category as the Harvey Weinsteins of the world. Totally reasonable. A few days later, as I was scrolling through Ina's podcast episodes, I was very intrigued that she had a panel discussion about the Lawrence Krauss allegations and the disappointing responses of prominent leaders in the movement. After listening, I realized that the criticism Sam had received for his response was totally valid, and I had brushed it off. Here's the thing. After listening to Sam's second statement, I took him at his word, and didn't bother to go read the BuzzFeed article for myself or watch his live response at the event. But after listening to Ina's panel discussion, I read the article, and I have to say, it was pretty damning. The fact that Sam was skeptical, given the source, was ridiculous. There was plenty of evidence and corroboration. You'd really have to bend over backwards to give Krauss the benefit of the doubt. Then I watched Sam and Matt's opening statements about it. It was pretty tone-deaf. I get that it's hard to process this kind of information about a friend, but Sam and Matt spent 20 minutes discrediting BuzzFeed as a source and downplaying the allegations against Krauss, claiming that the author of the article had failed to discuss the gradations of sexual misconduct and distinguish between things like bad flirting and rape, and sought to undermine the atheist movement and yada yada yada. It was definitely a soft defense of Krauss. Well, at least he didn't brutally rape anyone. He's not a monster. The reason this is so tone-deaf is that it's not true, first of all. Nothing in the article suggested that Lawrence Krauss belongs in the same category as Harvey Weinstein and deserves the same punishment. Insisting that we need to make these distinctions is patronizing to the victims here, because these women aren't stupid. They know the difference between bad flirting and rape. Also, there's a difference between bad flirting and a 60-year-old professor telling an undergraduate student that he likes the short jumper she's wearing. Sam can't seem to tell the difference because this was one of the most minor charges against him in the article, and Sam had said, "Some of these charges are pretty serious, but some of them just seem like bad flirting." I'm willing to bet that this woman doesn't want him thrown in jail, but her experience exemplifies a pattern of behavior, so it's a relevant piece of information to include in the article. Also, classifying the Aziz Ansari story as just an awkward date is totally downplaying how gross his behavior was. I've been on awkward dates before, but never anything remotely as awkward as that. Anyway, the problem I have with Sam here is not so much the tone-deaf response, but the fact that he never publicly apologized for it. I'm certain that he heard this episode because Ina was in contact with him about it. It's disappointing that he can't seem to take criticism. If he did apologize and I missed it, please give me a timestamp. And please, don't just take me at my word on stuff. I try to get my facts straight and play devil's advocate with myself when I'm writing and editing my videos, so I hope I'm spreading nothing but accurate information. But obviously, I'm a human being with limited knowledge and personal biases, and I don't want to develop a cult following. Ew. Lastly, let's look at some of the comments on my video, shall we? You lost my interest when you said you're a vegan. I gave up when this turned into a vegan rant. Okay, these people are so dogmatically opposed to veganism that they ignored my disclaimer that this video is not about veganism. This is just one example to illustrate a broader point. I'll save you time. His downfall was caused by not being vegan and not being a Bernie fan. Don't bother with this silliness. Yeah, precisely. Spreading misinformation that deters people from going vegan and opposing Bernie Sanders as a moral philosopher with a massive platform is a huge problem. Get a grip. You have misrepresented him early in your video. He did go vegan twice and his health suffered. Sam has no scientific basis for the claim that his health suffered due to a lack of animal flesh and secretions. Was hoping for some serious intellectual criticism, instead started off with highly dubious vegan propaganda. To which I responded, are you claiming that citing the official position of the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, as well as the American Dietetic Association, peer-reviewed papers representing the scientific consensus of nutrition experts, is propaganda? Sam's not a vegan. Sam is bad, frowny face. What a great characterization of my argument. Go back to sniffing your own farts and tongue-kissing your dog. Okay. Please put a PETA person disclaimer on your videos from now on so I don't waste my time. Thanks. Oh my god, what a rational thinker. Ooh, this one's good. Vegans believe they are morally superior because they see eating meat as animal cruelty. I am a bisexual, libertarian, black, Jewish, Latino. In my culture, there are many different recipes and traditions that require meat as an ingredient. These recipes would be disrespectful to my culture. This is why vegans are white supremacists. Alright then. Veganism is a cult. Provide a freaking argument! Your comments on dietary science are tribal and fraught with confirmation bias at best. There is way more to dietary science than what either you or that expert were saying, and then you falsely claim that your side is backed by a scientific consensus that doesn't exist. Take that up with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So Sam won't follow your sanctimonious veganism, and he's pragmatic in the diseased American system? Wow, great priorities. I was much younger once too. Don't worry, the world will kill your delusional idealism. Take care. This is such a typical comment. Like, vegans are so sanctimonious, but are we wrong though? Can you provide a coherent argument? If you've made it this far, you're probably a subscriber and you're probably vegan, so I assume this is a safe space for me to get out my frustration. But if not, I do not care. I have reached the end of my patience reading all these mind-numbingly stupid comments. If you're an atheist and you think you're so rational and you're so moral, fucking prove it and stop killing animals! Like, holy shit! This is not a difficult concept to grasp. I understand that politics are complicated. You have to know a lot of stuff about a lot of things to have an informed opinion. I love Bernie Sanders, but I don't have all the answers, okay? But when it comes to veganism, this is a basic kindergarten level concept. Animals are sentient beings. Why exploit and kill an innocent being when you don't have to? When you can literally just eat or buy or wear something else? The answer is so obvious. Meat is not a macronutrient. You live in the modern world. You don't need cow's milk or chicken periods for your survival. Or to build muscle. The information is out there. The science is freaking clear. We overcomplicate it because we want to. We don't want to accept the truth because we are so fearful of change. Nutrition science, admittedly, is complicated. Stating that there is a general consensus regarding human nutrition is not saying that we know everything there is to know about nutrition, case closed. It is the general consensus among nutrition professionals that a well-balanced vegan diet is nutritionally adequate and may provide health benefits. People hear, it's complicated, and for some reason interpret that as, there is no consensus. But this simply isn't true. Climate science is complicated, yet most of Sam's fans understand that there is a scientific consensus that human activity is warming our planet at an unprecedented rate. I'm willing to grant that in some cases, bacon and eggs would be a healthier breakfast option than oatmeal and a glass of orange juice. If a person eats an extremely unbalanced diet otherwise, and they're lacking in nutrients that bacon and eggs have but oatmeal and orange juice don't. But generally speaking, given what the majority of Americans eat on a daily basis, oatmeal and orange juice is a healthier option. So what Sam did by having this guy on his podcast was irresponsible. The public health ramifications are concerning enough, but animals are suffering by the trillions, and on top of that, our environment is being trashed. My frustration is not unwarranted. It's particularly frustrating to witness the people who pride themselves for being rational thinkers and sit around and philosophize about ethics, perform insane mental gymnastics to justify their irrational, unethical habits. There were other comments about how I'm wrong to dismiss Sam for a mere difference of political opinion. There's a lot more to it than that, and I might talk about this concept in a future video. Political differences are not trivial. My issue is that someone who I admired for making good arguments is now consistently making bad arguments, and is incapable of seeing the flaws in his reasoning when others point it out to him. He has demonstrated over and over again that he is hostile to fair criticism. And a few people took issue with the title of my video, saying it's unfair and it's clickbait to say he had a downfall. Like, bro, this is my personal opinion. I once had enormous respect for the guy, and now I have a lot less, so that constitutes a downfall in my mind. If it were any of these issues alone, I wouldn't have lost so much respect. It was all of these things in combination, coming from someone who advocates so strongly for secular humanism, that makes it feel like a betrayal. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this unconventional rant video. Give it a thumbs up, or actually, go give my last video a thumbs up because it needs some resuscitation. Alright, peace out.
Yo, how when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me no eat no fish, nah, no meat now. How when me eat them, I wonder when me yam. When me tell them say that I'm a vegan, man. How when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me no eat no fish, nah, no meat now.